Despite getting off to a bit of a checkered start, IISU has just launched their massive update Alpha 7. So let's dive in and check out the redesign and all the new features of this version of IISU. So welcome to IISU. So we're going to go through the setup process. It's very, very simple. A lot of this you can just follow what's on the screen, so we'll just skip through. So I'm going to enable DS mode. We will be changing the layout at some point in the video to get the new WiiSU layout. So very exciting, but for now, IISU DS. I'm going to leave mine on the system theme because I do like a dark mode. You can also select if you want a standard grid layout or an XMB, which is more like a carousel layout. I'm going to leave it on standard. And then if you want to show or hide any app names or console categories, then you can do so. But for now, we'll leave everything as basic. So for our library import, I'm going to pick my ROMs folder. We'll allow that. And then I won't link my ESDE folder yet, but if you want to link your ESDE folder, you just press that button and point it to it. I do use ROM, but I won't be setting it up for this video because it's a bit of a doozy for newcomers, so don't worry about that. You can select where you want to store your library media. I'm just going to do it on the internal package just to keep it nice and together. And then you can select which cores you want. So I don't know why arcade is set to flycast. It should be RetroArch. So I'm just going to change that. For the most part, it should have got the right ones. I do believe, however, so for PS2 emulation, so for Switch I use Eden. So we'll change that over. And then for PS2, I'm currently using the turnip driver version of Nether SX2. However, when I tried to select this, it did shout at me. So we'll see if I can... Yeah, so it's shouting at me for now. So hopefully something that can be fixed with a patch or something I can amend myself later. But for the initial import, we'll just leave most stuff as is outside for the few that I changed. Next up, this is some apps for the home page. So I just tend to have things like Chrome, Discord, and then my file browser, Solid Explorer, and just settings, just some simple stuff. Obviously you can have whatever you like. So I'm going to log into Retro Achievements. If you don't have a Retro Achievements, then I insist that you get one. It's completely free. It makes your retro games even better. So I'm just going to log into this. Okay, I'm all logged in. So next we're going to set up some scrapers. So what scrapers are these are systems that will get your artwork, your metadata, all that lovely stuff. So the only two you really need to bother with, I think the GamesDB and IGDB, from what I've tried, I've not been too impressed with the artwork and things they've returned. It's not very good. So for SteamGridDB, you'll need a Steam account, and for Screenscraper, you'll need a Screenscraper account. Both are free. Screenscraper does offer different tiers, so the free tier you're allowed to scrape, I think it's a few hundred a day, and if you chuck them a few euros, then you get access to even more. Well worth it. It's just a one-off payment. I think I paid 10 euros and I use this. I've been using it for a couple of years and it's wonderful. So I'm just going to sign into my scrapers, and then also at the bottom you can select if you have a preference. I just leave it on World and English. Obviously if you want US or Europe specific or even Japan, then you just select the ones you like. So it's going to prepare some assets in the background, and then we're going to generate the Retro Achievements ROM hashes as well. This is what allows it to detect the Retro Achievements. So for our first pass, you can use whichever one that you've selected. You can also use multi-scrape, which is the one I advise for the first pass. And then for your first pass, just leave it on only missing and it will populate any gaps. And then we can start the initial scrape. So this is going to download all the missing artwork for our games. And then you've got this nice little summary at the end just to show you basically what you've selected. So now let's enter IISU. So welcome to IISU. So pretty basic at the moment, but we're going to make it look pretty and we're going to make it feature rich. So we're going to press our right trigger first, and you can see you get these little notifications as it's scraping. So I'm actually going to cancel this scraper by tapping it and pressing cancel, because I already have my artwork scraped using ESDE, so I'll show you how to hook up that folder if you've already done that and you're moving over to IISU. I am going to leave the onboarding, which will do the retro achievements hashing though, because unfortunately there doesn't seem to be a way to import that. So for system notifications, so if you want to set this as a default home and just have all your system notifications display here, we're going to need to allow notifications. However, in recent Android firmwares, and I believe it's something that Android are pushing for, you'll notice that this is all grayed out and I can't allow notifications because it's a restricted setting. So the way around this is we're going to swipe up, we're going to swipe down from the top, go to our settings, we're going to go to apps, we're going to go to IISU, and we're going to tap these three little dots in the top, and we're going to allow restricted settings. And now, if we go back to IISU, we allow notifications, and then we can just tick that allow notification access. You'll get this little pop-up, just allow, it's fine. And then if we go back, you can see I've got my James DSP audio processor, which is also there. I'm just going to clear that up. It won't let me clear it, okay. So whilst our retro achievement onboarding is scraping in the background, I'm just going to take you through the UI. So we have our home apps, so obviously if you've pinned any of your other apps down here, you'll see them there as well. If we use our bumpers at the top, we can tab across. So we have our games menu. So I've got some games folders with like one game in, which I probably need to delete. So they haven't been matched to IISU's automatic artwork, unfortunately. So I'll show you how to tidy these up or remove them. And then we have the friends list tab isn't active yet, but we do have our achievements. So you can see here, this is connected to my retro achievements account. And if I click into a game, you can see how many I've unlocked. And then it might be a bit slow because it is still scraping them in the background, but it will show you the achievements there we go. So you can also see if I press on them, it tells me what the achievement was, how many points it was worth, and also what I need to do to unlock these ones that are still locked. So like I said, the friends list is not yet active. I'll show you how to connect Discord though, so we can see our friends up here. And then we have this little grid at the end, and this is just basically all of our other apps. So we've got our apps here. I believe this middle one should be our games. So if you've got Android games that are off the Google Play Store, for example, they'll show up here. And then we also have our emulators. Not sure why I've got two versions of ARM SX2. That's probably me being a muppet. So that's it for the basic UI. So let's first connect Discord. So we press our left trigger, we'll get this little connect to Discord pop-up. So we're just going to tap that. You'll get this pop-up, scroll down and authorize it. And there we go, we can see my Discord friends shout outs to these guys. One thing to note as well is if you press your Y button, it will swap the screens. Kind of similar to what Cocoon does, just a different button. Although I like having the navigation on the bottom and then the lovely artwork and things at the top. So I'm just going to leave it as is for now. So next up, let's look at our settings. So if we press start, we can see we've got our active tasks. We can also customize our home, so you can have a global horizontal scroll. You can have more or less columns depending on your personal preference. We can reorder our home, so if you prefer to have apps in a different order, then you can, obviously when you've got more widgets and things like that, this will make more sense. You can also refresh your metadata from here, which we don't need to do because we're going to scrape it soon. We can also create a collection. So I'm just going to create a collection now. I'll call it Pokemon, not Pomemon. And it's going to create a little folder. So what we can do with this is we can put all our Pokemon games in it. So if we press select on that folder, we can manage the media. So we can get a collection title if you've got a logo or an icon. We've got heroes, which are the big images at the top. So like I said, I haven't got any to hand, but you can customize it to your liking. So I'll show you how to add games to a collection shortly. So if we go to our main settings menu here, we can see more options. So you can customize what some of the input does. You can swap your buttons. You can change your appearance. So we will be covering this shortly. So you have things like you can change the fonts. So I wasn't a big fan of the Arctanian font. I do really like this Cal Sans one, although that Console Sans one is also really nice. I think I want to stick with Cal Sans for now. You can manage your custom themes. So currently we only have these 3 installed. I quite like the colourful one actually. I'll leave it at that. So you can import your themes. So currently there's no built-in theme viewer like there is in something like Cocoon. However, I believe it's on the cards, and currently there is a Discord full of people sharing all sorts of themes and artwork and all that good stuff, so be sure to check that out. For audio, you can enable, disable haptics and UI effects. I'm just going to turn, I don't know if the microphone will pick this up, but there is music playing. I'm just going to turn that off because I really do not like having music on my home screen. You go to our library and you can review your media that's been scraped. You can customize your scraper settings if you change password, for example. So what I'm going to do whilst I'm here is I'm actually going to link my ESDE folder. So if you're like me and you are someone who used ESDE primarily, then you can come to here, go to your ESDE metadata, and then just tap link the folder, and we're just going to grab our ESDE folder and we'll use that folder. And then if we go back, you can see it's scanning and it's gonna grab all the artwork. There's also things for performance. So if you've got this is the Thor Max. So if you've got a kind of a light or a base, or you notice that the battery drains a little bit more than you expect, you could just disable some of these just to probably help with that. We also have About, so you can see the GitHub repo, you can do updates from in here, there's all the libraries that are used and their credits, really good stuff. And then the current version we're on, Alpha 7. So one of the big new features of Alpha 7 is this WiiSU Mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to enable this. And then if we back out, we now have WiiSU Mode, which is a bit more like the Wii U. So you can have all your apps going this way with your horizontal scrolling. And then when we start looking at widgets, you'll see what we can do with this. So this is a brand new feature. It's dead cool. I've seen some amazing stuff that people have done. There'll be stuff that will be previewed in the video that went out recently, and you can have a nosy at that. So on our games tab, we've got all our consoles there, and then if we go into a console, we can see all our games and all the artwork that was scraped from ESDE, or if you've used the built-in scraper, it will be populating up here and you'll see it working its magic. But for these ones that have question marks, I think that's an Atari. I've got E.T., which is not as bad as people will have you believe. It's not good, but it's not the worst game of all time. So I just want to get rid of that folder. I'm not going to use it. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to hover over the folder and press select, or this little square button at the top. I'm going to go down to edit console settings. I'm going to come down to summary, and I'm going to delete the console. There we are. What's this one? System info. I don't even know what that one is, so we'll get rid of that as well. Oh, Microsoft Windows. So a lot of these will have just junk files in from when I've been messing around. You probably won't have all this junk, but forgive me. If we go in, we've got all our artwork and things like that. I can see it's still synchronizing some of the ESDE artwork. There are some games that I might not have ESDE artwork, so I'll show you how to manually scrape an individual game shortly. So we've got some here, for example, that we don't have any information on. This says it's BioFreaks, but it doesn't have an icon. So the way we do that is we hover over and we press our select. Select is like our de facto edit button. So we're going to go to, you can manage it. If you've got custom artwork on your device, you can just add it from here. Or if you just want to scrape it, you can go to scrape. You can either pick your scraper or you can do multi-scrape. I always advise doing multi-scrape just because you probably find a better image. So we're not going to overwrite the title because we've got a nice title here, and we're not going to overwrite the background because we've got a nice background, but I am going to overwrite the icon because I don't have one. So there we go. So it's pulled some artwork. So most of these are landscape. Obviously the N64 had these big chunky boxes. So I'm just going to pick this one for now, a nice square one. So it does seem to have removed my logo. Not too sure what happened there. So I'm just going to go and scrape, and then I'm going to overwrite the title as well. This is an alpha, so bugs are to be expected. There we go. And now that's back. Don't know if that was just a one-off or a common bug, but we shall see. So that's how to quickly edit your artwork for a game. You can also do the same with your consoles. Remember, we just use this as our little edit button. You can also manage the console settings this way. So for example, if it's picked the wrong console, for example, you can go to this console menu and you can just select the right one. For example, if it said it was an NES and it wasn't, it was an SNES, then we can just select that from there. And then for our emulator, if you'd rather use a different core or a different emulator, you can just choose from here. You can customize your ROM directories if you have multiple. For example, if you have some games on your internal storage and some on an SD card, you can just add a directory, point it to your SD card, and I don't have any ROMs on the SD card, but you can point it to a separate folder and have multiple folders per system. And then you get a nice little summary here. And then once you've done, make sure you press Update Console or the changes won't persist. Okay, so let's add some games to a collection. So I've got my Pokemon games. Oh, I've not got a image for leaf green. So just to reiterate, we'll just press our select button and then we'll just scrape. So we'll overwrite the title to give us an image at the top here. Take a second. Obviously, if you have different language versions, then you can choose whichever you like. We'll overwrite our icon, which is our bottom screen cover art. So I'm just going to grab that one. And then we can overwrite our background, which is what's behind the logo. So where all these symbols are at the moment. And I quite like that first one, so we'll just pick that one. There we go. Now that's done, I want to add this game to a collection. And also these other two. So we'll start at the top with Pokemon Emerald. I will press my select button. I will go down to add to collection. So if you haven't got any collections, you won't see this button. So you do need to make sure you create the collection first. So I'll press A and I'll tick Pokemon. Obviously, if you have multiple, you could just toggle them on and off as you see fit. And then I'll do the same again for these two. It's nice and simple. And then if we back out and go to our Home tab, and I go to my Pokemon folder, you can see that all my games are in there in a nice little folder. Obviously, it'd be nice to have some sort of built-in scraper for the folder artwork, but that isn't yet available. So one thing as well, if we hover over a game that has retro achievements and they've been successfully scraped, we can also see our retro achievements just by pressing our X button, and we'll get the same little menu that we would on our little achievements tab. So let's talk about widgets. So if I quickly boot into a game, we'll just do Banjo-Kazooie. So one thing to note when you're booting into a game is you can set your top screen or bottom screen as a default, either for the console as a whole or just for that individual game. I'm not going to be doing that for now, but I can just boot into a game. So the game's booted, it's pulled my retro achievements and all that good stuff. Now if I just quit out, if I go back to my, I don't know where my bottom screen has gone, I have to boot into IISU. Like I said, it is an alpha, so, oh there we go, if we swipe, it does seem to go away. It is an alpha, there will be bugs. I'm sure that the guys who built it will be watching this video and messaging me saying, oh, you've done this wrong, you muppet. So if we go back to our home screen, you should now see we have this little widget, a little jump back in widget. So we can press and hold and I can pop this there. And this is the beauty of this WiiSU mode, is we have more customization. So if you want, for example, just your apps on one tab, or you want to have a tab for emulators, a tab for browsers, don't know why you'd have more than one, but however you want to customize. If you wanted a collections tab, for example, then you can customize that to your heart's content. So there aren't a ton of widgets available when this launches, but according to the developers on their Discord, there will be many more to come. I know they're working on a retro achievements one and many, many others. And just finally, before we wrap up, one thing I want to cover is we can set a default companion app. So if we go to, for example, we'll pick a Pokemon game of Pokemon Leaf Green. If I press my select button and we come down to settings, so we can go to our launch options. So if you have So if you have a preferred emulator or a core for a specific game, you can edit this on a per game basis. For example, for Pokemon, if you want to trade with yourself or with your friends, then you want to use the GPSP core because that emulates the Game Boy Advance's wireless adapter. I like MGBA for compatibility. It doesn't have that functionality. But if I was playing a Pokemon game and I think, well, actually, for this specific game, I want to choose this one, then that's what I'd do. But we also have this Choose Linked app. So if I press into this and I say, every time I boot up Pokemon Leaf Green, I also want to open dual screen decks, it has now set this as a linked app. So if I back out of this and then I boot the game, I will boot it on the top screen. You can see it is booted straight into dual screen decks. So this is very handy, obviously, if you have companion apps for games. Don't really know why it's crashed there, but you can see that it did boot. It's an alpha, it's gonna happen. So that is just a great little feature. And then if we back out of this again and go back to our home tab, you can see my jump back in widget has changed to Pokemon Leaf Green. And there we are. That was an in-depth look at Alpha 7 for IISU. So you can download this from Obtainium. You can import it from the RJNY emulation pack. If you're not sure how to do that, then please see the link in the description on how to do that. I've got many, many more Thor videos to come. If you've got any questions about IISU, then feel free to pop them below. If you've got any questions about the Thor in general, then also please pop them below. If you like this video, I would always appreciate a like and a subscribe. I've also got a Discord you can join, which will be linked below. If you want to know anything about emulation, then please feel free to dive in there and ask. So, thanks again for the developers of IISU and the great work they've been doing. It's really coming along nicely. Obviously, there's bugs to be ironed out, but that's inevitable. But considering how popular Cocoon is, and Cocoon seems to have overtaken IISU, it's nice to see that IISU, it was down, but it was not out, and it is on a road to redemption. So, very different to Cocoon, but not something you should dismiss, and really like the work they've done. See you next time.